So I was gonna do a full video on how to design studio spaces, and I reached out to you guys on Instagram, and the overwhelming response was, how do you design for a tiny space? Today we're gonna talk about how to design a dope YouTube background for a small space. Because you know what? We don't all have a studio. We're all kind of starting out in our living room or in our bedroom. So we're gonna talk about how to create a dope YouTube background in a tiny little space. And I'm gonna answer a few of your questions. Angles, depth, design, furniture choices. We're gonna talk about all of it. I love this shit. I love this shit so much. So we have been making over our basement, our full basement. Don't record in your garage. We've been making over our entire basement into a studio. So obviously we have space, but in today's video, we're talking about small spaces. So I'm gonna set up a makeshift YouTube background in one of our spare bedrooms. So I'm out in the garage and I'm gonna be just kind of looking for something to use in the background. So I'm gonna shop the house and see what I can find. We're gonna use this as our background. Basically just gonna set it up almost as if we were just doing a portrait. So we're in a small space, it's gonna be tight, so the shot is gonna be tight, probably more like a shoulders up kind of height, so we're gonna make it look kind of interesting with some texture in the background. So we're gonna use this piece of 1/4-inch wood. All right, do that there. Never seen this room before, have ya? This room is not finished. Basically tossed our bed in here, tossed a bunch of shit in here. And this is gonna be the last room of the renovation because our master bathroom is right above here and we're changing all the plumbing around, completely doing the layout, ripping everything out. So we're saving this room for last. It's just, you know, carpet, beige walls, things that I am not a fan of. Okay, so I haven't done this yet. This is, what you're seeing is my first attempt at making this background. So we're gonna do something that's kind of super short, kind of shoulders up kind of moment. So I'm going to set the camera up and just see what that looks like in the background. Window light, man. Window light. This actually doesn't look terrible. It's got some texture in the background. It's kind of neat, but this is the cheapest plywood you can get. It's jacked up on 2 plastic boxes. Okay, I'm gonna grab some plants, see if we can't jazz it up a little bit, maybe add a couple of layers. Okay, so first we're gonna talk about shooting angle. The question that I got was, I know a lot of people shoot into corners. Is there a way to make small spaces work? So a lot of people talk about shooting into the corners and how they prefer that over shooting against a flat background. Shooting into a corner definitely gives you depth and gives you a more dynamic looking set. However, don't be afraid to shoot flat against a background. I actually prefer that look. And if you look at any of our studio setups in the past, I would say the majority of them shoot flat against a background. When I was shooting houses for my job, my favorite shots to take were those straight on, square on shots of like kitchens and living rooms where everything was like kind of symmetrical and straight on. And so I gravitate towards those types of angles in a studio setup like this. So while people say that shooting into a corner is preferable, don't live by that. You can shoot against a wall and make it look cool, but there are ways to add depth and we will talk about that shortly. Brought in plant and this stool and a couple of pieces of wood just to layer it up. Maybe if this was like a DIY channel, this background could work pretty well. Maybe a lamp might be too much. Something green over here maybe. Alrighty, so let's have a look. My pants are falling down. The joy about a setup like this is that you don't have to put on real pants. You could just wear whatever you want. So if we turn this on, we get a little bit of a glow there. These types of lights get really hot. You want to be careful because it's like touching the wood. We set up here next to the window because I'm assuming if you're in a small space, you're not going to have room for big lights. So use windows to your advantage. They look great and they're free. They look good. So the question is, how much of lighting placement goes into your initial design? Now, light placement is the most important part of your set. You kind of want to be thinking about lighting before you set up your set or decide on your shooting angle. In fact, maybe this section should have gone first. Either way, you want to think about what you're working with. Do you even have a light? If you don't, you're probably going to want to set up next to a window. Window light is a great free source of light and it looks fantastic. And that's kind of what we're using in our example today. Assuming that you guys don't have a light or your space is too small to set up a light, we're going to set up right next to a window. If you have have one light and only one light. We actually did a full video on how to get the most out of your one light setup. I'll link it up here. So for this particular shot here, I have this main light here. It's a nice big soft light source that's kind of lighting me up. I have a bit of a hair light here from a light that's mounted on the ceiling. Now in a tiny space, you're probably not gonna have that option unless you have a C-stand with a boom arm, which works really well. Having a hair light or a rim light really gives you that separation from the background. So if you have two lights and a C-stand, but you don't have a lot of space, popping a hair light will give you a little more separation from that background if that background is close to you. Back to my lighting setup, I have a couple of practicals here too. I have a lamp here and another lamp here. There's a lamp off camera as well. And these are just kind of tungsten lights that add a little something in the background so it's not super flat. I am sitting maybe 8 feet away from my background now, but I have a lot of space here, so I'm able to get further away from my background. I am shooting at 1.6 on a full frame camera with a 24mm lens, but we'll talk a little bit more about lenses and f-stops shortly. So what I have here in the background, this is just like crap that I grabbed out of my garage basically and just kind of like layered up to be sort of like a little bit of like a home reno DIY type background. So we've got the plywood in the background, then I've layered up a piece of particle board and another piece of particle board. Now if I was going to shoot at like say at 4, you'd get the idea of the texture more. So we have 3 different textures happening here, which make it kind of interesting, right? And then we have a light here, so it's just a little bit of something different in the background. So if you're in a tight space, you should kind of set something up that's interesting, but like not too distracting. So when I said later in this video, I actually meant right now. We're gonna talk about depth and focal length right now. The word depth, it's really weird to say. How do you get depth in a small space for video? Okay, so what happens when your space is too small and you don't have 8 feet or 5 feet to get away from your background to create that separation? Well, one of my favorite tricks to create separation without a lot of space, I like to take the 24mm 1.4 lens, open as wide up as possible, and get the shallowest depth of field as possible. And that will probably give you enough separation from the background for you to be happy with and for it to look dynamic and not too flat. This is this background and this shot at 1.4, so shallow depth of field, we're getting the separation. At 4, it's looking a lot different. Everything is kind of in focus. So you're not getting the same amount of separation that the shallow depth of field gives you. Adding things in your shot at various distances will also help create depth. And I'm sitting probably 1.5 feet away from the background. Now you can see that there's some separation. We've created layers by layering up the wood, and you can see the shadows here that the window's creating, plus some light. Try to have a little bit of space from that wall just so there's not like, you know, it's not too flat. And again, creating layers in your shot really helps, even if you have a small space. Does the furniture and furnishings that you have in your studio have to be in line with your brand? Because I am a big believer in having your set, what your shot looks like, match your brand. So when it comes to shooting furniture, you don't have to pick what other people have in their studio. If you do pick something that somebody else has, try to change it up with a different color scheme or a different lighting setup or different props. You want something that's a reflection of you, your personality, the type of content that you make, and what people can expect from your channel, your website, your Instagram. For me, I like dark, moody spaces. Our Instagram is pretty dark and moody. Therefore, my spaces are dark, moody, and neutral. I don't really like color. I appreciate color, but I don't love it. And therefore, you don't really see a lot of color in my spaces. But say, for example, somebody like Iz Harris, she's very colorful. Her personality is very colorful, lovely human. If you don't follow her, definitely suggest you check her out. Her brand is more kind of like, almost like National Park meets vintage vibes. It's very punchy. It's very styled. Her Instagram is kind of like golden, warm, turquoisey. Like those are the colors I think about when I think of her. And that plays through to her website and to her set. So if we break down her set, she again is shooting against a wall, and it works here because it looks very casual. She's sitting in her living room. She's got the brown, like light leather couch. She's got colors going on, her artwork in the background. It's layered up with pillows and blankets and texture, and it just works. And if you look at her set, her website, and her Instagram all side by side, there's a cohesive feel. So she's matched her furnishings to the brand. Just pick things that you really like. That's the key. Pick things that you like. I made a full video on how to find your interior design style for YouTubers. A very niche video, but honestly, I think you guys might find it helpful if you are designing your YouTube background. on trying to figure out where to start, because that's the hardest part. One question I got in the Instagram poll was, I don't even know where to start, I'm overwhelmed. So watch that video, hit up Pinterest, and just start looking at pictures you like, start pinning things, and worst comes to worst, look at your Instagram and then think there's some color trends here. I'll pick this color and just work with that. Just make sure though that whatever you choose looks pleasing on camera and works with your skin tone. I've talked about this in a number of videos, including that interior design video, which is up here. I don't like picking warmer tones, cream tones for my wall color, because my skin is that color. It makes it difficult to color grade and it looks flat. I just don't like it. So I pick really blue whites, bright whites. I pick dark and moody colors because there's more separation. My skin just doesn't like blend into the background, which is something that I hate about having beige or cream colored walls. Because as you can see, like my face kind of blends in with the wood because it's the same tone. So if this was a background that I was going to use, I might stain it or whitewash it or change the color of it in some way. Any tips on combining a living and studio space? Why, yes, I have many tips. Many? Well, so if you have no other choice but to shoot your videos in your living space, be intentional about your design. You don't want to walk into your living space and look in the corner or look at your couch and go, oh, I just picked that because I'm a tech YouTuber and I want it to look techy, maybe look okay on camera and match your brand, but in real life you hate it. And you're trying to shoot in your living space, just make sure that you're intentional about the furniture you're picking. Pick things that you love, that you want to look at every day. Paint your walls a color that you like, that you want to live in. You should be able to just break out your camera and shoot wherever. And we used to do this all the time in Vancouver. We had the world's smallest apartment. It's not the world's smallest apartment. Our apartment in Vancouver was just over 400 square feet, including the patio. So we didn't have a lot of space. We didn't have a light and we did not have a studio. So I shot on the couch with the window lights, how we did our videos. And it worked for a while. And even when we were living in our last apartment, we'd kind of get sick of shooting in the studio. So for a change of scenery, we'd go out to the living room. And the living room was designed in a way that I loved. I loved all of the furniture that was in there. All of the accessories that we chose were things that I really loved, that made me happy. If you're relying on window light, it makes shooting in your living room a lot easier because you don't have to break out all of the gear. You just have your camera, maybe your lapel mic, and that's it. We also made a full video on how to turn your bedroom into a home studio. And we basically took the spare bedroom in our house and it had multiple uses. So it was my office, our filming room, it was also a guest bedroom. And so we kind of broke down how we worked with all those challenges. I'll link that video up here. But even just something as simple as having a quick corner that is your kind of go-to spot that's set up, that looks good, that's not cluttered, and you can just break out your light, break out your camera, shoot, tear it down, stuff it underneath the couch, stuff it in a TV cabinet, and you're good to go. So that is it. I hope you guys found this video helpful, and hopefully this was able to give you some stuff to think about and wrap your head around creating small filming spaces for your YouTube channel. So hopefully you guys liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get notified when we post new videos. We will see you on the next one. It's like pitch dark in here. I don't know why I keep doing this. We're going to talk about lighting. We're going to talk about angles. We're going to talk about furniture. We're going to talk about depth. This is like the hand movement for that.